Okay, this is lesson 4. I hope you like our classroom. It's outside. I like outside classrooms better than inside classrooms, but there is some possibility of people making noise, whatever, but I think we can deal with it. So lesson 4 is entitled, What You Focus On Expands. Focus on the good expands. Focus on the bad expands. Obviously, resentment is something bad to focus on, and forgiveness is something very good to focus on. So, in this lesson, we're going to discuss how our focus is affecting our consciousness. A negative mind will never give you a positive life. Now, in Bhagavad Gita, the ancient teachings of India, there are a few verses which talk about the mind as enemy or mind as friend. And so mind is friend, depending on what you're thinking, what you're focusing on, and mind is enemy, depending on what you're thinking and focusing on. And also, in the Vedic teachings, it describes that there are disturbances in the world that come from nature. There's disturbances that come from other people, animals, insects, and there are disturbances that come from ourselves. And of the three, I have found in my own work that the greatest and most common disturbance is from ourselves. Because even if negative things happen to us, we don't have to be negative. We allow ourselves to be negative based on what we focus on. So there may be many great things going on in your life, and one bad thing, or one negative thing, and that one negative thing could consume you. I was once... I can't remember where I was, but a woman was talking to her daughter, and her daughter was asking why somebody was upset. I think they were shopping, and someone was upset. Probably because they didn't have her size or color, or what she came to buy had been sold out. And the young girl was asking her mother, because she couldn't understand, why is this lady upset? And her mother said, that's a rich person's problem. She's having a rich person's problem. So for a poor person, that wouldn't be a problem. But perhaps for a rich person, not getting the right color, the right style, the right size, is a problem. So I thought that was kind of funny. That's a rich person's problem. So a lot of us who have a lot have problems that poor people don't have. We have rich people problems, but for poor people, our problems may not be problems. Something to think about. So how you see positive and negative could be relative to your story, where you're at, what your life is like, and what may be positive for me may be negative for you. What may be negative for me may be positive for you. But whatever the situation, our minds don't distinguish between positive and negative. It's just what we tell ourselves. And if you tell your mind it's positive, the mind says, okay, it's positive, and then it reacts that way. If you tell your mind it's negative, the mind says, okay, it's negative, and then it reacts negatively. That's the amazing feature of the mind. The mind doesn't analyze. Intelligence analyzes. The mind is just accepting and rejecting. So if you put something in the mind, it will just, if it likes it, it will accept it. If it makes it feel bad, it will reject it. But it won't analyze if it's right or wrong. So if you put a story in your mind, whether you like the story, the mind accepts it or rejects it, the mind will believe it. That's the nature of the mind. It just believes what you put in. So you put in negative things, the mind accepts it, you get a negative life. You put in positive things, the mind accepts it, you get a positive life. The more you think about something, the more it becomes part of your reality. So we are all subjective beings. We all see the world differently. What's real for me may not be real for you. What's right for me may not be right for you. But according to our focus, the more we think about something, the more we start to believe it's true, the more that becomes our reality. Many of us have beliefs which are due to conditioning, social conditioning, conditioning from friends, parents, religious leaders, and so forth. And then from that conditioning, we believe things. We believe this is right and wrong, this is good and bad, and those beliefs become our reality. So as we focus on those beliefs, we see the world in a specific way, which may not be the way other people see it. So if we're focused on negative, our life tends to become negative, that becomes our reality, and sometimes we can't see that things are better. It works the other way. If you're focused positively, you may not really see that things are bad, even though people may say it's bad and things are bad. For you, it may not be bad. In Bhagavad Gita, for a self-realized person, nothing's really bad. It's just the way it is, but they're rejoicing within themselves. So they're very positive, even though it's amazing. They're positive even though things are negative. And even though things are negative, they don't really see them as negative. Even if they see them as negative or recognize them as negative, it doesn't make them negative. Because within, they're positive. So that's a great, you could say it's a great treasure when you can see something negative, but it doesn't make you negative. Because within, you're peaceful, you're satisfied, you're joyful. It's not what happens to you that affects you. It is your story about what happens to you that affects you. So we had discussed this in a previous lesson. There's a saying, nothing means anything till you show up. So you show up, something happened, and then you develop an idea. This is what happened. So let's say, for example, you see a mother yelling at her son and slapping him in the face. And so you begin to think, okay, either the boy did something really bad and he deserves it, or there's something wrong with the mother and the boy doesn't deserve it, or something in between. But you don't really know. But when you show up on the scene, you make a judgment about what happened. So therefore, nothing means anything till you show up. But I show up, I make another judgment. Someone else has showed up earlier. They've seen the whole situation. They have another judgment. So we all have different stories, and based on those stories, we have emotional responses. So if my story is that the mother actually saved the boy, he was about to walk off a cliff, and she pulled him back, and in her frustration, she just slapped him in the face to get the message across that, please, don't ever do this again. So that story wouldn't cause me to really feel that this is a bad woman. But if the boy didn't do anything, and I see the mother slapping the boy, then I think there's something wrong with this woman, we have to call the police, etc. And the boy is innocent. So our whole world is like that. We show up, we have a story. Now a lot of people show up with very negative stories. Everything's against me, nothing works out, I'm a loser, etc., etc. Another person in the same situation may have the complete opposite reaction. Everything's good, I just accept what I get, it's all meant to happen, no problem, right? Exact same event, two different stories. Now, sometimes someone will do something and there's a group of us, and one of us doesn't bother us, one of us, we get really upset. In my story of resentment, I was working very closely with someone who gave up on his duties, and I felt betrayed. But other people in the organization felt very happy that he was leaving. So the same thing happened, two different stories. Good riddance, thank God he's gone. And I'm thinking, how can you leave? You're betraying us. You're giving up your responsibility. Same thing happened, two different stories, two different responses. So what you tell yourself about what happens doesn't define the reality, it defines your reality and therefore your response. So if you tell yourself a different story, you get a different response. Spiritual literature is meant to help us see things from a higher consciousness. So we see things in a way that uplifts our consciousness. But we could see things in a way which degrades our consciousness, just like in resentment. Something happens to you, but you could think, actually it was good because I needed to learn a lesson. And the person was just a messenger for me. Or you could see it as your karma. This is something that I created, and it's purifying me. You could see it that way. That's a good story, because if you have that story, it's going to uplift you. But the story of bad things always happen to me, this person's an abuser, I didn't deserve this, I'm a victim, it's going to bring you down. And it's going to make it very difficult for you to deal with it, and you're not going to learn anything, and you're not going to grow. So stories are really important. What you tell yourself is how you respond to the situation. And nothing means anything until you show up. You put your subjective reality on what happens. And if you're in spiritual consciousness, your reality is different. You see everything favorable. You see everything bringing you closer to your divine connection. If you're in the wrong consciousness, you might just see everything, the world's turned against you, and everything is bad. And you might feel undeserving of what's going on. What responsibility do you have in causing a person to harm you? Very good question. So I was once in a workshop, and the facilitator said, think of a time when you were victimized and tell your partner the story of your victimization. So I thought of a time. I was in charge of a yoga center, and there were a couple women working in the center that really didn't like me. And they were responding very negatively to me. And in fact, nobody in the center really liked them very much. Everybody told me they're causing problems. That's their nature. And the other people in the center, they liked me. So everything was good with everybody but these two women. So naturally I thought, well, there's something wrong with these women. And they did a lot of things to make my life difficult. Sometimes to make my life miserable, and sometimes to make my life hell. So that's the story I told. When I was supposed to tell a victim story, that's the story I told. It was about these two women. So then the facilitator did a little change up on us. He said, now I want you to tell the story, but this time I want you to take responsibility for what happened. No longer the victim, but this time you're going to take responsibility, which completely caught all of us off guard, especially when you tell your victim story. Obviously you're not thinking you caused it. You're not thinking you have any responsibility. So I had to think. And it was very transforming for me to think about this, because the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I realized that I was doing things that was causing them to react negatively towards me. And I began to realize that if I were in their shoes, I probably would have reacted in the same way. Because unknown to me, I was kind of, you could say, being a little sarcastic with them, derogatory, minimizing them, being a little critical. And I didn't realize it until I thought about what responsibility I had in their behavior. So, this is an amazing exercise. And I'm not saying in every situation you might see the connection of the link. But in most situations, if you think about it, you can see your responsibility. Just like the price of oil. The price of oil is dependent or affected by the demand for it. If you and I never took a bus, never drove a car, only rode bikes, never rode in airplanes until airplanes can run without fuel. If you and I didn't use fuel, what would happen to the price of fuel? It would probably become cheaper than water. In fact, I was in the United Arab, I forget which country it was, Oman or somewhere. Water was more expensive than gasoline. They would, as a service to the citizens, they would sell gasoline basically at cost. So gasoline was like equivalent of 25 US cents a liter. And water was more expensive. So if there's no demand for fuel, for gasoline, petrol, what happens to the price? It goes down. So if I asked you to take responsibility for the price of fuel, of oil, you might think, I have nothing to do with the price. But if I said, please, try to think how you do, then you'd realize, well, if I just walked or rode a bike, and my neighbor did, and their neighbor did, and we had a movement for that, it would change the price. So you can see how there are many things you can take responsibility for. Even though at first thought you don't think you had anything to do with it. In every bad relationship you ever had, in every argument you ever had, you were there. Did you notice that? Did you realize? You were present in every argument you ever had. You were present in every bad relationship you ever had. Isn't that amazing? You're actually present in every bad relationship. Oh, really? I never thought of that. Yeah, you're right, I was, wasn't I? Yeah. So it takes two to tango. How many? Two, right. Takes two to tango. So what responsibility did I have in a bad relationship? I had no responsibility. It was all her fault. I was perfect. Yeah, right. And she's thinking the same thing, that she was perfect and it was all your fault, and you're thinking you're perfect and it's all her fault. Obviously not true. So this is a very good exercise for you to do. Take some situation where you're blaming someone or you feel a victim and think, what responsibility did you have? And then you can apply that to resentment, because what responsibility did I have in causing this person to harm me or abuse me in some way? Time for a nice story. And this is a story about stories. Remember, we were talking about stories, right? So this is a story about stories. Again, everything's a story. I had my story. These two girls were out to get me. They didn't like me. I changed my story and realized, no, they were responding to my misbehavior. Story changes. My resentment towards them goes away. Actually, I saw them a few years ago. Everything was fine. Because once you give up your resentment, everything's fine. So there was once a lion named Kashi. He grew up alone in the forest. Somehow or other his parents abandoned him when he was a baby cub. And living in the vicinity were a group of bears. Baby cub bears, baby cub lion. And they looked very similar and they thought he was a bear. So they adopted him. And he lived together with the bears. And they were very close. They were bear brothers. And they used to cuddle in the winter when it's cold. They'd line up and stay warm like that. But at a certain point, as you could imagine, when Kashi, the lion, was a little older, he started looking different. Now the bears thought he was a bear, so when he started looking different, they thought something's really wrong with him. But they didn't understand that he was a lion, and Kashi didn't understand he was a lion. Nobody understood he was a lion. So they said, hey, Kashi, go in the river and look at yourself. There's something wrong with you. And due to social pressure in the bear society, they had to sorrowfully tell Kashi that you can't really live with us anymore, because actually you are an embarrassment to our aristocratic bear family. And, there's something wrong with you. I'm not sure what it is, but you look kind of like a monster. And if the word gets out that we have a monster for a brother, if mom and pop, the word gets out they have a monster for a son, it's going to destroy our reputation in the bear society. You have to go. So, sorrowfully, he left, very depressed. Not only because he was thrown out of his family, but because there was something wrong. He was a deformed, ugly, monster-looking like bear. So one day, a saintly person is traveling through the forest. In times of yore, saintly persons in India were called sadhus, and sadhus lived out of the cities in the forest. Very simple lives. They would just gather to eat whatever they could gather, whatever they could get from people that they would give them, and they'd sleep under a different tree every night. So this sadhu was traveling in the forest, and said, hey Kashi, he knew Kashi. He said, hey Kashi, how's it going? Kashi said, really bad. What happened? I was extricated from my family. Why? Because I'm a mutated bear. And the sadhu, the saint, what did you say? I'm a mutated bear. Bear? Kashi, you're not a bear. So what do you mean, My bear brothers and bear mother and father, they threw me out of the family because I'm a mutation. There's something wrong. They said I look like a monster. And they can't have me in the family because it's an embarrassment. The sadhu, the saint, said, Kashi, you're not a bear. You're a lion. Kashi said, what are you talking about? I'm a bear. I was raised by bears. Bear is what I am. He said, Kashi, you're not a bear. You're actually a lion. Kashi said, I am? I'm a lion? You mean I'm not a bear? I'm a lion? Kashi, You are the man. You are the king of the jungle. All the animals worship you. You're a lion. And Kashi said, I'm a lion? I'm the king of the jungle? I'm the man? I'm strong. You mean I'm not a mutation? I'm not a monster? You know, I'm actually a lion? I'm a beautiful lion. Yes, Kashi, you're a lion. You're a beautiful lion. All of a sudden, Kashi's full of pride, full of energy, full of power, full of joy. Kashi's ecstatic. What changed? Nothing changed except one thing, the story. That's all that changed. Kashi had the wrong story. We have stories about resentment. This person was after me, this person hurt me, this person abused me, I didn't deserve it, I didn't do anything wrong. We don't have stories about this is a lesson, I had something to do with it, God is teaching me something, my abuser is a messenger, this is karmic. If you don't have those stories, you're going to have stories which are really going to put you down, and it's just going to bind you and hold you to your resentment, because your story is creating your resentment. The very story that you have, if you want to forgive, you have to change that story. Because if you don't change the story, you have a story which causes you to be resentful. Isn't that simple? It's so simple. Forgiveness is as simple as changing a story. Actually, in my workshop, our 2-day workshop, and our online workshop, what we're really doing is reconstructing the story. Because when you reconstruct your story, then you come up with a story that yields forgiveness. You see it in a different way, and naturally you forgive. It's that easy. I know it sounds easy, but it's that easy. Whatever you are for inspires you. Whatever you are against drains you. So, resentment, as we described in the first class, drains us. It's draining us. It's toxic. It's a burden. It's heavy. Why would you want to focus on anything that drains you? Doesn't make any sense, does it? Whatever you're for drains you. You want to do a little experiment? You don't have to, but if you want to, think about something that really bothers you. And keep thinking about it. Just keep thinking about it. Dwell on it. Focus on it. As long as you can. Day after day after day. Talk about it. Write about it. Think about it from different points of view. Think how bad it is. Think how horrible it is. Think how bad the people are. Think how bad the company is. How bad the government is. Whatever it is, just think about how bad it is. And you know what's going to happen? You're going to become completely discouraged. Guaranteed 100%. You don't really have to do the experiment because I've done it myself. And probably inadvertently, you've done it and you know when you focus on something negative, you become discouraged, guaranteed. You just don't want to deal with it at all. Whatever you're against drains you. Whatever you're for gives you energy. So why wouldn't we be for something, and why should we be against something? Resentment is going to drain you. Forgiveness is going to inspire you. It's that simple. Forgiveness is such a high level of consciousness. It is so powerful and so uplifting and so joyful. It's such a high emotion that if you're forgiving, you'll be like one of the most positive people around. And if you're resentful, because it is such a low level of consciousness, you'll be negative, you'll be handicapped, you'll feel victimized, you'll have a million excuses for failing. It's just toxic, inside and outside, up and down, any way you look at it. Focus on what you want, not on what you don't want. A lot of people focus on what they're afraid of getting. Like, I don't want to be poor, so I'm not focused on creating wealth, I'm focused on not creating poverty. I don't want to be sick. I'm not focused on creating health, I'm focused on not being sick. Not being sick is not health. Not being poor is not wealth. I'm focused on my relationship. I don't want to get divorced. I'm focused on not getting divorced. I'm not focused on having a good relationship. I'm focused on not getting divorced. Not getting divorced is not a good relationship. I teach workshops on marriage. And a lot of people, I find, if they just stay together and don't get divorced, they say, that's a good marriage. So bad relationships has become the new good. As long as we're still together, it's good. It's not good. You just haven't got divorced. So when you focus on the negative, I don't want this to happen. I hope this doesn't happen. I'm going here. I'm climbing the mountain. I hope I don't fall down. What are you focused on? Falling down. I hope, I'm going into a dangerous neighborhood. I hope nobody steals my wallet. What are you focused on? Somebody stealing your wallet. So you probably know what happens when you focus on negative. It tends to draw that in you. Just like we know about the law of attraction. Law of attraction says what you focus on comes to you. So if it's negative, it's going to come to you. If it's positive, it's going to come to you. So wherever you want to go in life, whatever your goal is, you need to focus on it. And a lot of people don't focus on their goals because they don't think they can achieve them. So they focus on all their fears about not achieving their goals. And guess what happens? They don't achieve their goals. Oh, I could never do that. Why don't you do this? Oh, I could never do that. It's always like this. Yeah, it may always have been that way, but set a goal to change it. And if you set a goal and you focus on it long enough, what happens? The way the universe works is things start falling in place. So why would you want to focus on resentment? It doesn't make any sense. Focus on what you want, which is forgiveness. So many of us are trying to forgive, but we're focused on resentment. I hate this person. I just can't forgive them. There's no way. They don't deserve it. No way I can forgive them. What they did, it was so bad. If I forgive them, I'm just condoning them. So you're focused on resentment. So it's obvious why you can't forgive, because you're not focused on it. You're focused on all the reasons you can't forgive. And you can apply that to so many things in life, how we're focused on the negative to the point we're convinced that we can't get out of that negative environment or negative consciousness. So focus on what you want. Focus on where you want to go. Focus on where you want to go. A man is judged by his ideals, not where he's at, but where he wants to go. You may be here, and your goal is here. But if your eyes are set on your goal, you're going to get there. But if you're here and you're thinking, I can't get there, then your eyes are where? They're set here. And so you don't go anywhere. It's just the way the world works. What you appreciate appreciates. Now this is very interesting, because appreciation is an extremely positive emotion. And when you appreciate, appreciation transforms your consciousness. It turns you around. So let's say there's something that's a problem for you. It's causing a problem for you. And you try to appreciate it. You only see it negatively. In this case, it's going to be a person who you're trying to forgive. So you only see the person negatively. You're only thinking about what they've done wrong to you, what they've done bad, right? So what if I asked you, appreciate that person. Appreciate them as a divine being, as a spiritual being. Forget what they've done. Appreciate them as a living entity. They're part of God. God is in their heart. They have a right to live. They have a right to exist. They're like you. They want to be happy. They're like you. They experience anxiety. They experience stress. They have all the same worries you have. Just appreciate that they're trying to keep their life together. They have so many divine qualities that maybe they're covered to one degree or another, but the more you get to know people, you see the good side. And just appreciate them. And when you appreciate them, you'll see that your heart changes. Because if you're in resentment mode, that means the whole time you're just thinking about what they did wrong, what they did bad. And that's your focus. Whereas appreciation shifts your focus completely 180 degrees. You imagine you're going to appreciate someone who you've been thinking horribly about for years, maybe decades, and now you're going to appreciate them. Do you realize how transformational that is? So I would like you to appreciate the person who's hurt you. Just think good thoughts about them. Think of their good qualities. And in your heart, just appreciate them. Try that on and see how that makes you feel. And now it's time for a little more homework. You can't get away with these lessons without some homework, because the homework is where the rubber hits the road. Write down your negative thoughts about the person who hurt you. All things you don't like about them. Write down ways in which these thoughts are draining you physically, emotionally, or spiritually. So now you're really going to get into your thinking process. You're going to be honest and vulnerable, and you're going to look at the thoughts that you have towards this person, and then you're going to allow yourself to reflect on how this is draining you. And then, as we said, you're going to appreciate the person. So you're going to look at the negative, then how that negative is draining you, and then, as we said in the last slide, you're going to appreciate them. I think you'll find this extremely beneficial. And then, after you do this exercise, we'll see in the next lesson, don't do the next lesson until you do the exercises, because everything happens in the exercises.